Howdy, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
For the family that emailed us and said that you bought some M&Ms to have with Kim and Mike, we restocked. So get your M&Ms.
So, pause the video and go get your M&Ms. You're going to need them for this one.
Yes.
Woke up this morning to some great news, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
It's official. Jehovah's Witnesses have responded to the Australian redress scheme. And ProjectTV in Australia has done a segment, about a 10-minute segment, and I'm going to put the link down below, and to their website for the statement that Jehovah's Witnesses has done.
Yeah.
The ProjectTV in Australia, like I said, they've done a 10-minute segment on Jehovah's Witnesses and the federal government's deadline for the institutions to join the National Redress Scheme. Wait till you guys hear this statement that Watchtower sent them. Mike and I were calling BS. Statement to the project regarding the National Redress Scheme and the sales of Kingdom Halls and properties. Now that tells me they know we're on to them and their property sales, because for them to mention it, we feel this is damage control.
Of course.
Yeah. The religion of Jehovah's Witnesses does not have the institutional settings that the voluntary National Redress Scheme is designed to cover.
Well, why don't you just talk to Jehovah, governing idiots, and have Jehovah institute the institutional settings? God, do you see how stupid these people are?
All they need is money.
Exactly. That's all they need.
You don't have to have this huge network, of institutional things set up. Wow. Therefore, the Ministry for Families and Social Services has been advised that Jehovah's Witnesses will not join the scheme. So there, it's official. We knew it right off.
Well, of course.
We knew it. Jehovah's Witnesses understand that to date there have been less than 10 applicants to the redress scheme who have referred to the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. Only 10?
Come on. Come on.
Jehovah's Witnesses have responded and will continue to respond directly to individual claims for redress in a caring, fair, and principled manner, taking into consideration the unique circumstances of each claim.
In other words, what they're going to do is, if there's a legitimate claim, they're going to be forced to sign a piece of paper that's going to gag you. You can't talk to anybody about how much money we paid you as a victim. We've seen this all over the United States. That's why it's difficult to get a hold of these records, just to show how much Watchtower is paying out in legal fees and monies to the victims, because they put gag orders on them.
Yeah.
That's why the Candace Conte case was such a landmark case, because she refused to sign a gag order. You Jehovah's Witnesses have got to comprehend that.
Well, that's what happened here in New Mexico.
Exactly.
To that case. The pedophile left the state, and they put a gag order on it, closed the record, so I couldn't even, find out how much was paid out, or if it was dismissed or what. But I figured that since there was a gag order on it, that they did pay her. Otherwise, if it was dismissed, they wouldn't have cared.
Right. See, and that's all this statement is saying. So for you Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia that are going to take this avenue, just remember, you're going to be shut up. Once again, just like the disfellowshipping policy shuts all of us up.
Yeah. The religion of Jehovah's Witnesses also provides spiritual comfort and assistance to child abuse victims and their families.
No, they don't.
Every single abuse survivor that I know, personally, know No, they didn't get anything from the elders. They got shunned. They've got threatened.
Right.
Threatened with disfellowshipping? No. This is a huge lie. Oy vey. The Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse acknowledged that Jehovah's Witnesses do not have the institutional settings that exist in many faith-based institutions. Jehovah's Witnesses have not sponsored any programs or activities that separate children from their parents at any time. Jehovah's Witnesses do not operate boarding schools or Sunday schools. They do not have youth groups, choirs, or sponsor any programs for children. Neither do they run orphanages, daycare centers, hospitals, nor youth centers. Jehovah's Witnesses simply do not have the institutional settings that result in children being taken into their care, custody, supervision, control, or authority. Now, I do have to disagree with that in part because I know that a lot of times, oh, well, you can work with this elder and his family. You know, go work with this brother. They were always trying to get our daughter to work with them, you know, and I never would let her go alone. The ministerial servants and elders study with young boys and men. And Mike's seen that for himself when he was a ministerial servant. You know, the mom asked him to study with her son.
Right, because her husband was not a Jehovah's Witness. So yes, they do have those programs in place.
Yeah.
But it's not viewed as a program. It's viewed from the perspective of, wow, you have a mature brother studying with my son right now. And that's where a lot of this shit happens.
Yeah. There are 762 congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia. Congregations meet for worship in buildings that are called kingdom halls. Due to population movement and changing demographics, from time to time it is necessary to sell some kingdom halls and purchase others. Since some kingdom halls have been used for decades, it is more economical to sell than to renovate them. How Jehovah's Witnesses determine where kingdom halls are located is explained in the video found on our website, www.jw.org, at this link, and they have the link. Over the past 5 years, Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia have purchased 7 new properties, constructed 17 new kingdom halls, and undertaken 430 renovations. To help offset the cost of these building projects, 27 kingdom halls and 11 plots of annexed land were sold during the same 5-year period, and an additional $11 million was invested in these new building projects.
Watchtower, who invested the money? Was it you? Was it somebody on the board of directors in Pennsylvania? Or was it that you put out a friendly little letter to all congregations looking for donations?
And they paid for it.
And they paid for it. Exactly. We've been Jehovah's Witnesses long enough to know how this little scam, this little racket works, Watchtower. We know how the racket works.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
So we all remember that lovely little clip from Stephen Lett about the final parts of the last days. And I know many on YouTube, you know, this weekend was supposed to be the end of the world. And, you know, the Aztec calendar was wrong, and with the new moon and all of this.
And here we still are.
We've lived through another Armageddon.
Yeah, we lived through another apocalyptic prophecy. But Friday, I had the displeasure. I mean, I had the pleasure of going shopping with Kim. And while looking at some of the prices of food, something occurred to me. That's why people like Kim and I can get a lot of mileage out of idiots like Let going, these are the last of the final part of the last days, brothers. Because being inspired by Almighty God, myself, I remember studying the Revelation book. And I remember seeing something as I'm looking at the price of bread.
Yes, this was 4 loaves for $5. It's $1.25 per loaf.
Because, as Let says, if these are truly the last of the final part of the last days, then you misinterpreted something. Let me read this from page 96. We're talking about Revelation 6:6. A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the olive oil and the wine. So that's obviously quoted from Revelation 6:6, but I want to read Watchtower's comments. All 4 cherubs are united in expressing a need to watch food supplies carefully, just as the people had to eat bread by weight and in anxious care prior to Jerusalem's destruction in 607 BCE. So you're comparing Jerusalem's destruction in 607 BCE, of course we all know those are wrong dates, to the end of the world, today the end of this system? Really, Watchtower, that's one hell of a long stretch, isn't it? Going from 607 to past 2020.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't mention 70 CE, because that's when we know there was famines.
Yeah,
in Jerusalem.
exactly. You kind of skipped over that little part, didn't you, Watchtower? And you also skipped over the little part of Ishmael coming home to roost. You skipped all of that. Going on, in John's time, a quart of wheat was reckoned to be the daily ration for a soldier. How much would such a ration cost? 1 denarius, a whole day's wage. Well, as we showed, bread does not cost a day's wage. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but I make more than $5 a day. Okay? I can sit at home in this chair and make more than $5 a day. So, come on, Watchtower, these can't be the last of the last days yet, because I haven't seen bread cost a day's wage. You got that wrong. Going on. What if a man had a family? Well, he could buy 3 quarts of unpolished barley instead. Even that would feed only a small family, and barley was not viewed as a quality food such as wheat. Paragraph 23. What is implied by the statement? Do not harm the olive oil and the wine? Hey, I'm pretty sure Tony Morris can tell you what that implies.
I see you're a fan of Scotch. Do you know anything about Irish whiskey?
Yeah, not a lot. My wife likes it.
Yeah.
Jameson's always
Yeah.
popular.
I usually get Bushnells, but I don't know anything about these, newer ones,
Yeah, the Jameson's been a good long time.
Yeah.
This one I don't know, but hey, that's nice to just test them out, taste them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been to Scotland
All right.
a number of times, so I just
Well, thank you.
Scottish and Irish, so I'm not prejudiced. A lot of the Irish ones will say,
Yeah.
you got to try our stuff,
Yeah. I know I've had the green spot. That's very nice.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll just go with
Hard.
another bottle of JMO.
You can't go wrong with it.
We all remember Tony Morris going in and buying all that alcohol.
I bet he's glad alcohol hasn't gone up that much.
I'm sure. Some, carrying on, some have viewed it as meaning that while many, what do you mean, Jehovah's Witnesses? What do you mean, governing body? Some have viewed it? What about your view? You're supposed to be the faithful and discreet slave, right?
Hasn't Jehovah told you what that means?
So why have you got to go and say some? Why aren't you saying we? We've been told by Jehovah that's what this means.
Why are you going to other scholars to get this information?
Exactly, because you have nothing, Watchtower. You've got nothing. Your word selection proves that to be so. Some have viewed it as meaning that while many would be short of food and even starving, the luxuries of the rich would not be harmed. And that's why you have Tony Morris the turd getting caught buying all that alcohol, because the luxuries of the rich won't be harmed. That's you, Watchtower, isn't it? So we can't be in the last of the last days because, first of all, bread doesn't cost a day's worth of wages, and the rich have not been harmed yet.
Well, he keeps spending that much on alcohol, and he's going to go through his trust fund pretty fast.
Yeah. Maybe somebody should teach him and his boy how to build a still out in the forest. Going on. But in the Middle East, oil and wine were not really luxuries. Really? How do you know that? Where are you getting that information from? Oh, from the same some that say,
Scholars.
have been viewed by many. Yeah, exactly. In Bible times, bread, oil, and wine were viewed as staples. See, I remember reading this, friends, and I remember myself making a comment right here, just like rice and potatoes are staples. They're not harmed. I remember making a comment that meat was a staple, and meat wasn't harmed. Oh, wait a minute. What's this?
I want to thank our dear friend in Canada who sent us this picture. Yeah, this looks like a hunk of beef. Maybe ribs, hard to say. And I know this is Canadian dollar, a little bit more than what the US dollar is worth, but $294? Really? Wow.
Well, look at the price of the hamburger that we, took a snapshot of.
$5 a pound.
People, that's hamburger. That stuff they scrape up off the floor, for crying out loud. $5 a pound. For a hamburger, that's scrap meat. Where's the biblical prophecy showing that the meat would be harmed? Oh, it seems like John missed that. Or maybe the revealer of secrets missed that. Maybe that revealer of the secrets didn't look into 2020, but only went as far as 70 CE and then backdated it. Going on. With regard to oil, wait a minute. With regard to oil, isn't it funny that olive oil is still in plenty? And olive oil hasn't gone up in price. Not really. Okay, with regard to oil, in Elijah's day, the widow of Zarephath, poor as she was, still had some oil left with which to cook her remaining flour. Therefore, the command, do not harm the olive oil in the wine, appears to be advice. Watchtower? Appears? You're the faithful and discreet slave. You shouldn't be using words like this appears to be, because all that shows is that you don't know. That's all that shows, Watchtower, is you monkeys' asses don't know. But it sounds good on paper.
Well, look how long they've had that prophecy about the locusts being the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, they had to
and
change
after
that.
100 and something years, and they just now changed it?
Yeah. Do not harm the olive oil in the wine. Appears to be advice not to use up these basic commodities too quickly. Oh, no. See, what you want to do, Jehovah's Witnesses, is you want to put that in your to-go bags. That's what you want in your to-go bags, because you got really nowhere to go.
Well, your mom doesn't have room for that because she has all her martini mixings.
Of course, because that's a luxury.
No, that's a necessity for her.
For her, yeah, that's a necessity.
I know. Bad Kim.
Basic commodities too quickly, but to be sparing in their use. Otherwise, they will be harmed. That is, they will run out before the famine ends. Wow. Jehovah's Witnesses, governing idiots, how wrong you are about these prophecies in Revelation.
Well, they have a picture of one of the four horsemen. Looks like the pale horse.
Death.
With death following closely behind.
Yeah. Jehovah's Witnesses, this is an awful big earth. You know, I had a discussion with my mother years ago when I was still fully indoctrinated. Well, I keep saying fully indoctrinated. I still had a lot of questions. And remember the passage in the Bible where Jesus says, pray that your flight doesn't come in the wintertime? I had a conversation with my mother regarding that statement from Jesus Christ. And I proved that statement wrong. And my mom had to acknowledge that that was a wrong statement. Because see, here in the United States, when it's summertime, in Australia, it's wintertime. So that prayer of Jesus Christ, pray that your flight doesn't come in the wintertime, cannot be fulfilled. It can't be. That's an impossible prayer to fulfill. It doesn't work. So when there's famine, we can send food to Australia and vice versa and around the world, because that prayer cannot be answered. And I had that conversation with my mother, and she had to admit, yeah, that's true. Because when it's wintertime here, it's summer in Australia. So those brothers, those Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States praying, oh, Jehovah, please don't make Armageddon come now. It's too cold for me to grab my to-go bag and flee to the mountains because there's 25 feet of snow in the mountains. Oh, Jehovah, please don't let it happen now. That prayer can't be answered. Do you Jehovah's Witnesses comprehend what I'm saying and what I'm getting at? Especially when it comes to the teachings of this organization. They don't have a clue what they're doing when it comes to the words in the Bible. But when it comes to screwing your minds over, they know exactly what they're doing. That's why you see Tony Morris going out there and buying the luxury of wine. That's why you see Let saying, these are the last of the final part of the last days. And it ain't coming true. But you Jehovah's Witnesses, you live in perpetual fear of what comes out of these monkeys' asses' mouths.
Well, it's just like this statement they sent to the ProjectTV there in Australia. It's like, it just reeks of damage control.
Yeah.
And oh, this is why we're selling Kingdom Halls. Because see, they know our property tracker was sent to, you know, this redress scheme.
Yeah.
And the property tracker knows how many millions of dollars they have gotten from the sale of Kingdom Halls. They know how many we know about Kingdom Halls that were sold. So I think they're just trying to get ahead of the, you know, tsunami.
Yeah.
But I think it's too late at this point.
Well, here's the thing, and they also know because it was in the article. They're moving the money offshore. Okay? This isn't a big secret. This hasn't been a secret at all. It's just the fact that you've got people now that are looking at this from a business perspective instead of a religious perspective.
Yeah, and you know, just like the recording we put up last week, I believe, or a few days ago, with the Kingdom Hall Trust, you know, them all voting on this. How many fully understand, how many JW members fully understand that all of the assets, that means the congregation's bank account,
That's right.
everything they own, all assets, that means money in the bank. And you know, I want to thank the person that just sent me the recording, because the congregation made an announcement. They have the accounts reports read, and it's interesting because they have more expenditures for May than donations they took in. and then they say, we want to cancel donations to the congregations for right now because we're going to be closing our account to merge with Kingdom Hall Trust. So when you start comprehending all of that, it's like, oh my goodness. So even the $5,000 they may be keeping in their congregation bank accounts, many don't understand. That money is going to be sent to Watchtower. They are going to clean out their bank account, close the bank account, and then the Kingdom Hall Trust takes care of all of us. And they sign the property over to Kingdom Hall Trust. They become the owner of the property.
See, that's no different than a big corporation merging with another corporate, buying out another corporation, and then the two become the one. The corporation that's being purchased, they have to close all their bank accounts and they have to transfer all that money over. So what Watchtower is doing to you Jehovah's Witnesses, and you got to comprehend, is that they are merging smaller charities, your Kingdom Hall charities, to a larger Kingdom Hall Trust charities. This is a business move. This is not religious, this is business. And when you have a franchise like a little Kingdom Hall that's no longer making money, and they haven't been making money for a long time. Ever since, there are two things that I can point to myself to show where Watchtower started financially being hurt. Number one is a few years ago, maybe a decade, 2 decades ago, when they had to get rid of charging for the literature. We're going to the more improved donation arrangement. What happened to all of us? We sat in our Kingdom Halls. Watchtower on Thursday nights during our during our service meeting, we were all being prepared how to ask for donations at the door.
Well, what we would have to do is when you picked up the literature, they had a contribution box right there on the counter. I remember that clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody would be looking at you. So if you got a big stack of literature, you had to reach into your, wallet and put money right then and there to pay for the literature, basically. And then when you went to the door, like Mike's mentioning, and we were asking for donations, so then if people gave you a $20 bill for a donation, well, then you were supposed to put that in the box. And it's like, wait a minute. Many of us, it bothered us because it's like, wait a minute. I have to give them the donation I got for this, but I had to pay for it out of my pocket. And I can remember going and ordering stuff that would be deemed expensive.
Expensive.
If you ordered like a deluxe Bible or the large reference print Bible or the Insight book, something like that they thought cost the Watchtower a lot, they would say, well, I can order these for you, but just know that these are really expensive. And
right.
so you need to make, a good donation to try to cover the printing to help Watchtower out. So it's like, wow,
Yeah.
guilt trip.
So, how many of us were actually uncomfortable asking for the donation? It was very I'll put my hand up too. Yeah, very uncomfortable, especially knowing in your mind you already donated, you already paid for that literature. Now you're getting paid twice. How many of you, like Kim mentioned, got a stack of magazines? Maybe put $15 in the contribution box and you got a $20 donation. How many of you took back your $15? Nobody. Nobody.
Well, I can remember even when they charged for literature, I was too afraid to even ask for money to sell the literature because I felt I'm not a salesman.
Yeah.
So I never did even ask for money when they were getting money for it.
It was very tough to do. Now, the other thing that hurt Watchtower in a really bad way was canceling all the loans because they got caught acting as a bank because they were charging
6% interest.
See, and I remember this, living in Cottonwood. We all put our hands up and said, yes, let's send Watchtower the $30,000 surplus we had on our bank account. It was a conditional, loan. It was a conditional use. But when it came time to remodel our kingdom home, I had a discussion with the presiding overseer. We had to borrow our own money with interest at that time. We had to borrow our own money with interest at that time. Now Watchtower got caught. So what happened? We're going to cancel all your loans, going to cancel all your debts. Oh, what a blessing from Jehovah. But then a piece of paper got passed around saying, how much can you donate? And by the way, when you write that figure down on that piece of paper, that's a vow. So what you vow, you should pay.
Well, even the letter they read, and this was back in 2014, everybody has this letter now. The first page was read to the congregation that your loan was forgiven and all's wonderful, but we still have all these building projects. But then they didn't read the second page, the part that said to the elders only, do not read to the congregation.
But hey, we read it.
Yeah. They didn't read to the congregation that they told the elders that if you're making a loan payment, still send that same amount, if not more.
Right.
And if you're having a problem making this payment, then you need to contact the service department.
Right.
So they still wanted that same amount payment. So it looks good to the congregation that their loan is forgiven, but to the elders, they know, no, it wasn't really forgiven.
No,
we
it
still
wasn't.
have to send that same amount.
Yeah. And what was so beautiful, the most beautiful thing about what they did at that time is there was already too many PMOs awake. They put that little number on that piece of paper and then didn't donate. How do we know? Because
They told us.
they told us. Watchtower, we're telling you right in plain sight. You know why we're telling you this? Because we love to watch you people squirm. Because that's what you're doing right now. You're squirming.
Damage control.
Damage control. Why did you have to redo this book twice? Mark and Cord did a video called Tip It. We had to use whiteout the second and third time we went through this book. Why? Because you didn't get it right. And here's the thing about the bread. Whoever's given that prophecy to John at the time didn't get it right either. Because those words about the bread don't apply today. It'd have been more accurate if it had said a pound of beef, a pound of meat would cost a day's wage.
Well, that is our first clue. That tells us those scriptures do not apply to today. I honestly feel that applies to 70 CE when the Romans were camped around Jerusalem, and we know from several secular historians that there was a famine. There was a horrible famine going
Starve 'em
through
out.
Jerusalem. Yeah.
See, and that's where study and research really becomes your greatest ally, especially when you can recognize that some of these things were written after the event, but then backdated to make it look like these were prophecies. So I have one question, and I mentioned it earlier in this video. If Jesus Christ is giving a prophecy for the last days, the final part of the last days of Jerusalem on the Mount of whatever mount he was on with his the disciples
Olives.
in Matthew chapter 24, why didn't Jesus, why didn't that prophet, why didn't the Son of God, and for some of you friends, God himself, why did he not prophesy the return of Ishmael, Islam, setting up that temple in Jerusalem? Not one word is mentioned even through the book of Revelation, the return of Ishmael. Not one word.
Well, the
Nothing.
only thing it does mention is that Jerusalem would be cut into 3 pieces.
Do you know how many years in the future that had to have been written and then backdated? Because that would have had to have been written after Ishmael returned home, right? That would have had... Think, friends. I can't scream this enough. Well, I don't want to, because it's hiding in plain sight. It's right there. how come Jesus did not prophesy the return of Ishmael?
Well, on that note, we're going to thank you for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing.
And enjoy your M&Ms. I am.
Yes. And it's Father's Day here in America, so happy Father's Day. So you all have a wonderful week, and just know we're all going to keep the pressure on Watchtower.
Yes.
And we're not letting up until they change their policies, and apologize to all the victims and take responsibility for what has happened, because they're not even taking responsibility for what happened.
Right. And just keep in mind, too, I'll make this my closing thought. Count your blessings on this particular day, because the Mayan calendar failed once again.
Well, that's the thing, is even back when they thought it was December 21st, 2012,
Yep.
everybody was like the end of the world.
End of the
It's like,
world.
no, when you talk to the real Aztec scholars that were understanding that, they said, no, it's the end of an age and the beginning of a new age. The Mayans just didn't have it on, their next age. They just knew when that one was ending. So even if it ended last night or today, same thing. It's the beginning of a new age.
So this is the first day of the age of Aquarius, right, Mayans?
Yes.
We're all still here. We're all counting our blessings, and I'm probably going to have a sandwich for lunch. Well, hell, since bread is so cheap, I'll probably have 2 sandwiches.
Gonna have to have peanut butter on that.
Peanut
since
butter
meat's
and jelly,
so
since
expensive.
meat's so expensive. Yep, exactly.
Peanut butter and jelly and M&M's. Good
Yep.
lunch. You all take care, friends.
Bye.
Bye.